Doris Lessing's The Golden Notebook, 1962, is a complex and ambitious work that has garnered critical acclaim for its deep psychological exploration, feminist themes, and innovative narrative structure. The novel is a key text of 20th century literature, particularly in feminist literary studies, and has often been hailed as a radical examination of both personal and political identities. Lessing weaves a multifaceted narrative about the life of Anna Wolfe, a writer who grapples with the fragmentation of her identity in a post-war world marked by political turbulence, personal disillusionment, and shifting gender roles. While The Golden Notebook is often analyzed for its exploration of the personal and political, its lesser-known details, psychological undercurrents, and thematic complexity offer a rich terrain for further exploration. This essay will delve into these aspects, shedding light on the novel's treatment of gender, personal identity, the psychological fragmentation of its protagonist, and its unconventional narrative structure. One of the most significant aspects of The Golden Notebook is its experimental structure. The novel is divided into 4 separate notebooks, each representing a different aspect of Anna's life. These notebooks are the Black Notebook, which details Anna's experiences and observations during her time as a communist activist in southern Rhodesia, modern-day Zimbabwe. The Red Notebook, which is focused on her political activities, her frustrations with the left-wing political movement, and her attempts to engage in revolutionary thought. The Yellow Notebook, which contains Anna's more personal, intimate reflections, including her relationships with men, her mental health struggles, and her exploration of the boundaries between self and other. The Blue Notebook, which is Anna's journal of her writing process, as she attempts to make sense of the chaos in her life and write a novel that encapsulates her experiences. At the center of these fragmented notebooks is the Golden Notebook, a symbolic whole that Anna attempts to create as she seeks a unified understanding of herself and her fractured identity. The Golden Notebook serves as both a literal and metaphorical object that represents Anna's attempts to reconcile her internal contradictions and conflicting aspects of her life. However, the act of creating the Golden Notebook is incomplete, just as Anna's search for identity is never fully realized, underscoring the novel's exploration of personal fragmentation and its resistance to total closure. This fragmented structure mimics Anna's psychological disintegration and reflects the theme of internal fragmentation, a central idea in the novel. By presenting multiple perspectives and voices through the different notebooks, Lessing allows for a more nuanced exploration of Anna's psyche, political beliefs, and emotional turmoil. The complex, overlapping narratives also echo the way in which Anna, and women in general, must navigate multiple roles in society, as women, as writers, as political beings, and as sexual beings. The Golden Notebook is often regarded as a landmark feminist novel, but its feminist themes are layered and complicated. Lessing critiques the societal roles assigned to women, particularly the way in which women's identity is shaped and fragmented by these roles. Anna's struggle to integrate the various aspects of her life reflects the broader experience of women who are forced to negotiate conflicting expectations between the personal and the political, the emotional and the rational, the feminine and the masculine. Anna's relationships with men play a crucial role in her emotional and psychological development. One of the most significant relationships is with her lover, the writer Michael, who represents an idealized, masculine image of the artist, but who ultimately contributes to Anna's feelings of inadequacy and frustration. In her relationship with Michael, Anna feels that she is expected to fulfill certain roles that reflect traditional gender norms, such as being a supportive partner, a muse, or an emotional caretaker. Her dissatisfaction with these roles underscores the alienating effects of gender expectations, and her eventual detachment from Michael marks a rejection of traditional heteronormative relationships. Anna's sexual encounters are also significant in exploring the theme of gender and identity. In particular, her sexual relationships with men like Michael and Richard, who are central to her emotional life, reflect the tension between freedom and entrapment, agency and submission. While Anna experiences sexual liberation in some of these relationships, she also faces exploitation and emotional disconnection. These contradictory experiences speak to the ways in which women's sexual autonomy is often compromised by societal structures that seek to control and commodify female sexuality. Lessing's treatment of feminism in The Golden Notebook is often considered ahead of its time. Anna's failure to find lasting emotional or intellectual fulfillment in traditional gender roles speaks to the broader crisis of identity faced by women in a patriarchal world. However, Lessing does not idealize or romanticize female liberation either. The complex portrayal of Anna's experiences with men, her own ambivalence toward the feminist movement, and her refusal to offer a simple solution to the problem of female identity all underscore the novel's refusal to present a monolithic or idealized feminist path. The fragmentation of Anna's self is both a result of external societal pressures and her own internal contradictions, making the novel a profound meditation on the difficulties of achieving a unified, self-determined identity. Anna Wolf is the novel's psychological center, and much of the narrative explores her internal world and her struggle to reconcile the multiple facets of her identity. Anna is a writer, a woman, a mother, a political activist, and a lover, and her attempts to integrate these identities are fraught with tension. The fragmentation of her personality is a key theme of the novel, and Lessing uses this fragmentation to explore the psychological toll of modern life, particularly the struggles women face when trying to define themselves in a world that is continually shifting around them. In the novel, Anna's psychological fragmentation is not just a reflection of her own internal conflict, but also of the larger societal forces that shape her. The collapse of traditional values, the rise of political ideologies, and the shifting expectations of women all contribute to Anna's disintegration. Her mental health deteriorates as she tries to make sense of her fragmented self and the world around her. Anna's psychological breakdowns and her subsequent attempts to make sense of her life are emblematic of the larger existential crises that characterize the mid-20th century, especially for women who are caught between competing ideologies, roles, and expectations. Anna's psychological fragmentation is also symbolized by the Golden Notebook itself. The notebook is meant to unify the fragmented aspects of her life, but it becomes a symbol of her inability to reconcile the contradictions in her identity. The act of writing the Golden Notebook is, in a way, an act of self-exploration and self-explanation. But despite her efforts, the notebook remains incomplete, much like Anna's understanding of herself. The fragmented nature of the notebooks that make up the bulk of the novel mirrors the fragmentation of Anna's psyche, reinforcing the idea that identity is not a singular, unified construct, but something that is constantly in flux. In terms of structure, the fragmented notebooks function as a kind of psychological diary, offering different windows into Anna's consciousness. This shifting, fragmented narrative style allows Lessing to explore Anna's emotional and psychological depth from various perspectives, creating a more dynamic and multidimensional character. By juxtaposing Anna's personal life with her political and intellectual struggles, Lessing gives the reader a rich and layered portrait of a woman grappling with the contradictions of her time. At the heart of the Golden Notebook lies a critique of political ideology, particularly Anna's disillusionment with Marxist theory and the leftist political movements of the time. Anna's involvement in communist politics is explored primarily in the Black and Red Notebooks, where she reflects on her earlier passion for leftist ideology. However, as the novel progresses, it becomes clear that Anna is growing increasingly disillusioned with the limitations of ideological thinking. She feels that political movements, despite their promises of social change, are often manipulative and dehumanizing, reducing individuals to mere instruments of collective goals. This disillusionment with politics is not just personal, but also reflects the larger intellectual climate of the 1950s, when many individuals began questioning the efficacy of political movements, especially in the wake of the failures and atrocities of totalitarian regimes. Anna's rejection of political ideologies also speaks to her rejection of any rigid, externally imposed framework for understanding her life. Just as she resists the gender roles imposed upon her, she resists political ideologies that attempt to define her identity or purpose in the world. Lessing critiques not just political ideology, but also the intellectualization of politics. The intellectual elite, with their lofty ideals and theories, seem detached from the lived realities of individuals, particularly women, who are left to navigate the consequences of these ideologies on their own. Anna's rejection of both political ideologies and conventional gender roles reflects a broader critique of systems that attempt to define and limit individual agency. A recurring theme in the Golden Notebook is the search for unity and the construction of the self. Throughout the novel, Anna attempts to make sense of her fragmented identity by writing in the various notebooks. Yet she cannot find a way to reconcile the disparate parts of her life. Her search for unity mirrors the larger existential question of what it means to be a complete and authentic self in a fragmented world. The Golden Notebook, as both a literal object and a metaphor for the self, represents Anna's struggle to create a cohesive narrative from the various pieces of her life. However, as the novel makes clear, the search for a singular, unified self is often elusive, and it is this tension between fragmentation and unity that defines Anna's experience. In this sense, The Golden Notebook is a novel about self-exploration and the impossibility of finding definitive answers. It reflects the modernist anxiety about identity, agency, and the limits of self-knowledge. The fragmented narrative structure that Lessing employs is not merely a stylistic choice, but a thematic one, illustrating that the self is never fully whole, but always in the process of becoming, whether through writing, relationships, or political engagement. The Golden Notebook is a landmark novel in feminist literature and a profound exploration of the psychological and emotional challenges of living in a fragmented, rapidly changing world. Doris Lessing's intricate narrative structure, psychological depth, and feminist critique make the novel a powerful and complex work that speaks to the personal and political struggles of its time. Through Anna Wolf's fragmented identity, Lessing interrogates the construction of selfhood, the constraints of gender and politics, and the existential crisis faced by individuals in a world where ideologies, relationships, and identities are constantly in flux. By resisting easy answers or solutions, The Golden Notebook offers a nuanced and enduring commentary on the complexity of modern life and the challenge of reconciling the different parts of the self.